Hey boys, when I heard Bandai had released the biggest, baddest Valkyrie ever, I knew you'd want me to spend a few nights with it, and a camcorder, and then share every detail with you. So let's get more comfortable and get down to...
Why are my lights on? What are you doing? You leave that toy. This is my rodeo.
You'll get like 10 times more views if you let me do it.
I wish that weren't true. But this one is mine.
Fine. You play with your toys. I'll go play with mine.
I thought you were still handcuffed. Hey everyone, welcome to Scorched Toys at Anymoon.com's review of Bandai's launch version DX VF-1J Hikaru, released at the end of December 2018 for 18,000 yen. Didn't pre-order one? Well then you're not getting one. Not without paying a hefty markup, because this thing sold out in a heartbeat. If you like Robotech, Transformers, Mezco, or just about anything else, click the link in the comments below to head on over to Big Bad Toy Store. You'll help me provide you with great content and help yourself to a great selection and better customer service. This launch version of the toy comes bundled with a special display stand. That display stand is in its own box, so the box for the toy and the display stand are bundled together in a special sleeve. If you dive into the display stand box, you'll find one tray with a base, arm, and fighter mode adapter. Instructions for this display stand are on the back of the box. The toy comes in a box that is a small step down from what we've seen from the phenomenal DX VF-31 toys. It's sturdy cardboard, but there's a little less concern for presentation here. There's no remove before flight lid, no cover for the accessories, and no styrofoam tray. The first plastic tray includes the toy and the following. You get a Pilot GU11 gun pod, strap for the gun pod, 4 pairs of mechanical hands. They got mechanical looking fists, mechanical looking gun holding hands, mechanical looking splayed finger hands, and TV style right gun holding hand and left splayed finger hands. You also get intake fan covers, 2 gear walk antennae, a display stand arm, and Batroid mode adapter. There's a leg removal tool and 2 side cavity fillers. In a second tray, you'll also find a display stand base with the gearwalk and fighter mode adapters. Behind all of that, you'll find instructions. I have a full scan of the instructions in my article on Anymoon.com, as well as a separate 4K transformation guide I encourage you to check out. This is the special launch version display stand that comes with the toy. It's just a base and an arm. There are no pivot points anywhere in the base arm connection, and it's just hollow underneath, not a lot of heft to it, although a little bit more than the standard version of the display stand. There is a groove in the adapter and a peg on the bottom of this circle here that determines what level of bank you'll be at. So you could be flat, or you can bank the toy this way, or this way, and those are your only options. You can't do any sort of angle in between because of that whole slot methodology it uses. To install the fighter mode adapter, and again, this is a fighter mode only adapter, there are slots on either side of the head that are going to fish into this adapter like so. Now before we do that, using the adapter is going to inhibit one gimmick of this toy, and that is a gimmick we saw in the Yamato V2 toys, that you can bring the head down and be firing, theoretically, at multiple enemy, tracking them with the head in fighter mode. So that's a gimmick that this toy can do, but when you add the display stand adapter, that gimmick will be somewhat inhibited. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the pegs from the front of the adapter, fish them into those slots on either side of the head, and then just push in. It'll lock in pretty securely, and then we can take the toy and put it on the adapter in one of those banking modes. If you're going to do flat, you might as well just use the basic stand, so I'm going to go ahead and bank it like so. And that is your special display stand. This is the basic display stand that will presumably come with all future releases. It's a shame. It's a carry forward from the Macross Frontier Nuns releases. There should be a UN Spacey kite if they expect to sell any more of these VF1 toys. It's just such a no-brainer and such a shame that they didn't actually do that. This display stand has the benefit of working in all 3 modes. This adapter, though, attaches just like that display stand adapter that I've already shown you, and it's very similar in gearwalk mode, so I'll skip that as well. This display stand, obviously no banking functionality, no other functionality at all, really, just other than holding your toy up in this particular position. This is a Yamato 148 VF1 gun. It has an expansion in the middle, an expansion for the trigger, and it has a gun strap with a little molded buckle that attaches via 2 metal loops that go through 2 tiny holes. Now, the problem with this gun is that it works great when the strap is attached in Batroid and Gearwalk modes, but doesn't work so hot in fighter mode. So what you'd have to do is remove the strap. Theoretically, you can kind of fudge it if you want. Removing the strap is a bit of a pain in the butt because of all the tiny holes and little metal rings involved. And as your toy gets older, you might actually end up breaking the connection points for the strap. So what Bandai has done with the DX toy, and I'll give you a little size and shape comparison and paint comparison as well here. Bandai has given us a gun that has the same expansion in both places. They've also given us this strap. The strap still has a molded on buckle. I don't know if I'm too crazy about the brown color, and there is a mold issue on one side, but it's, I don't know, not the most obvious thing. What Bandai has done is they've given us pegs attached to the rings. So now the strap simply pegs in to position, like so. I will say I wish my front peg were a little tighter. But there you go. So now I have the gun strap installed, and if I want to go back to fighter mode and I don't want this strap interfering with anything, I can very quickly just unpeg the strap and be on my way. Now, one better solution that I hope someday we get a much bigger toy to go ahead and put a retractable strap in there, as one would think that's how it worked in the actual show. Bandai couldn't give us a toy about the same size as a Yamato 148 and not include all of the same features. So like a Yamato 148 toy, you do get an air brake in the back here. That air brake, as you can see, doesn't have any paint applications to it, but is pretty nicely detailed. Closing that up, we have an opening canopy. Now, one big complaint here is that the pilot just kind of floats around in there. He's not very tight in his positioning, but very nicely detailed. Some have complained that the pilot overall is too small. I don't think it matters enough to me. It's good enough size. There you go. Now, moving on towards the wings here, we do have wing flaps. Now, unlike the Yamato 148, I have not inadvertently knocked these off at all. They seem to be on there pretty sturdy. Flipping the toy over, obviously we have that gun installed. We also have these integrated landing gear with all these pop-out doors. Now, the landing gear on the back do pivot outward. That is something we didn't get on the Yamato 148. They are metal. They do have a nice strut detail in the back there. They're obviously fairly attractive, but they're not white painted. The bay itself looks decent. Nothing really to write home about there. The landing gear themselves are pretty tricky to use. So we bring the wheel in, we push it down. In order to close everything up, or even more so open everything up, there are these doors on hinges. Here we go. And you need to really extend those hinges to get everything to work just right. So I can bring this down, I push it in, bring this down and push it in and bring that down. Now, when everything is recessed like so, it's incredibly attractive. It's nice and flat. There's no gaps. In fact, it's a little too nice and tight because prying this open is very difficult. I often use my little cell phone repair tool, and then once you get it going, you hear that pop. That's a little uncomfortable. You have to then pull it up. You really want to pull that up before you swing it open so you get some clearance from this leg fin here. And then everything after that opens up pretty easily. Turning our attention to the front, we have these removable intake covers that show off the intake fan within. And there's some nice detail work there. It still would be great to see someone figure out a way to not have these be separate parts. And then we have the front landing gear with the articulated tow bar. Can only come down perpendicular to the ground because it hits this front piece here, which is a good candidate for a paint application that they did not apply. If we close this up, once again, we have another hinge that extends away from the body. Close these guys up. Everything is going to sit nice and super flush, but again, that's going to make it pretty tricky to open this landing gear up again when we're ready for it. Fighter mode with this toy is really a dream. It looks very attractive, but there are a few issues that you're going to need to get the knack of to really get the most enjoyment out of it. First, don't knock your nose cone. That peg in there is not really sufficient to hold it into place. You're gonna want to learn to handle this toy without hitting that nose cone. Second, you're probably gonna be repositioning that pilot quite a bit because every time you bank the toy, he gets jostled. Coming towards the back of the toy, there are these leg fins. They are on hinges that extend, similar to the landing gear we saw earlier. So if I bring this over, that hinge extends. This is for the future grenade box protection armor. In the meantime, though, it just ends up with fairly sloppy fins. Even in their most recessed position, they bobble around. It's not the best feeling, and it is too frequently folded over on you. So those are the negatives. The positive is pretty much every other feeling you can have while holding this toy. It's beautiful, it's incredibly detailed, it has lots of articulation, and it's solid. It's rock solid. So overall, very high marks for fighter mode. Now, one thing that I'm hoping is unique to my toy is mine has a little hairline crack right up in the front. I'm not sure if that'll make it on screen. That came from the factory that way. So when you first pull your toy out of the box, give it a quick look, particularly around this chest area for Batroid mode, for any little cracks you might have. Hopefully it's a one-off just issue that affected me, but certainly if you do have a similar issue, leave a comment. Transformation to Gearwalk is very enjoyable. The arms and shoulders move into position in a way inspired by Bandai's High Metal line, which is very user-friendly, sturdy, and seems better from a durability standpoint than Yamato's pivoting system, which was easily the weakest point on the 160 version 2. Also, the backpack on this toy moves with buttery smoothness as compared to the totally unnecessarily stiff and prone to breakage Yamato design for the 160 V2. Yamato also had durability issues with the backpack on their 148 toys, which could sometimes be tracked down to people failing to recess the little antenna on the back. On this toy, that antenna is spring-loaded, so that won't be an issue. On your way to Gearwalk mode, you'll expose the integrated articulated hands for the first time, which are very impressive. They're a decent size. The thumb has a ball joint at the base and a knuckle up above that. Each finger has the actual knuckles you would expect from a human hand. The only thing you don't have is the ability to splay the fingers out. The hand also does a great job holding the gun. So you take your gun, there's that peg right in the palm, so we can fish that through, peg that in, bring the fingers around, and it'll hold that gun perfectly fine. Of course, you do have the option at this point to use the fixed posed hands, which obviously go on via ball joint. So here is our integrated hand. Here is a mechanical gun holding hand, so we can kind of simulate that. And you can see the mechanical hand just a little bit bigger. And then we can also take our TV style hand, which is even larger, and put that on the toy. So there are your options. All just plug right in via ball joint. You've seen VF-1 toys in Gearwalk mode before, but you've never seen one this pretty. This toy is amazing. Between all of those paint apps you've no doubt seen in all my close-ups and the mold, everything comes together and looks just amazing. You get incredibly aggressive leg swoop. That helps out a lot. Now, one thing fans of Perfect Transformation are not going to be a fan of is this antenna here. It is not integrated into the toy. Yamato had a little tiny antenna that was. On the Bandai, you have to go out and grab the antenna from the box and then install it. Now, the little annoyances I pointed out in fighter mode with these leg fins and the nose cone, still all very much in play, but otherwise, you are going to have a ton of fun handling this toy in this mode. And a big part of that is these giant metal feet. Nice point here, the detail within doesn't break up, but the better point is that's all metal, and that makes this leg incredibly heavy. which gives you a very low center of balance, which means you can have a lot of fun and the thing's not going to tip over on you. Also, there is a ton of articulation baked into that metal joint. So inside, we have the ability to pivot the leg in towards this housing or out towards this housing. And then we have the ability to twist the leg. And obviously we could bring the toe way up or way down. So between all of that, you have the most functional ankle that you've ever had, most functional foot in a VF1 toy, which is gonna make for a lot of fun handling this toy. And obviously, all that metal is gonna add to the heft, which will make it feel like a more premium experience. Another little piece of articulation we get is this little nozzle here, also articulated. So overall, gear walk mode, just a lot of fun and looks great. The honeymoon ends during the transformation of Batroid. The legs feature a gimmick whereby they attach to the nose cone and then separate from their swing bar to enable a waist rotation point. Unfortunately, the housing often separates prematurely, so you'll end up with your toy in two parts. A premium Valk should be perfect transformation, and it doesn't feel perfect if it only stays in one piece in theory. With some practice and maybe loosening the hips, you might be able to keep it together, but Bandai should look for a fix before the next release. This toy does come with chest cavity fillers, which have a peg on the front and a peg on the back. So they lock pretty securely into place, which was a problem with the Yamato chest cavity fillers. Now they are serving a function, so while they're optional pieces, they do help the toy stay together. So right now it's locked into the chest, and as it comes down, it will lock into the sliding mechanism in the back to really pinch everything together, and that will help solidify your toy in Batroid mode. So optional, yes, but it does have a benefit more than just the aesthetic. My toy does have two fit and finish issues. The first is these intake fan covers. They just feel a hair too large. They peg into position, but they don't really nest like they should. The same was true of my canopy in fighter and gear walk modes. While I could push it down and it would sit in the right spot, it had to be pushed down. It wouldn't just sit there naturally, so it was just a hair too large. Now I did remove the cavity fillers on the side. The toy still functions fine this way. It's just not quite as rock solid, and you can see, now you can see right through the side to that nose cone. So the cavity fillers do add a bit in both those regards. Now once you get here, the toy looks phenomenal and handles even better. The head is a true ball joint, so you can cock it in either direction. It has a nice neck. You can look up, you can look down. You can also cheat with that neck plate underneath to look further down or further up if you wanted to. Head lasers actually pivot out and are independently articulated, which is always nice to see. The shoulder has a gimmick where it slides, the armor slides out to give you a further range of motion outward. Obviously you can pivot all the way around at the shoulder as well. And the shoulder's on a hinge, so you can do sort of a swept back arm look. Although I do wish you could kind of sweep it forward just a little bit further than you could go. Not bad there at all. You do have a swivel at the bicep, which goes all the way around. And then check out this elbow. The elbow comes all the way up, perfectly flush with the shoulder. So that's a huge improvement over any previous VF1 toy. You've already seen this is a ball joint, so you know what the hand can do, and the integrated articulated hands as well. Then we have our waist joint. Now, if you do run into an issue with the waist joint or you feel something pop while you're handling the toy, there is this little housing in the back, and you really need to make sure that housing stays flush and tight up, because otherwise this crotch can unpop and your legs can get loose on you, which is not where you want to be. So if you feel like your legs are getting loose, that's probably the culprit. Moving down the hips, look how wide you can get with the hips. Before we talk about anything else, that's cool. You can go up. Now I'm gonna run into my wing, but you can come way up, you can go way back, and then you have obviously that gear walk joint, which will come into play, and there's a lot of weight below, so it might be a little more loose than you're expecting, but all of that very good stuff. And then as you come further down, you can also engage a new pivot that we have never seen before on a VF1 toy to get the legs super splayed out. Look at that. That is nothing short of amazing. So that's going to be a lot of fun for you. You do have the knee. If you don't extend it, you can't even get 90 degrees. If you do extend it, you can get a little better than 90 degrees, but that's probably the weakest point of articulation. You also have that twist point at the knee, which will also work if the leg is compressed. And you've already seen me do crazy things with the feet in gear walk mode, so that's all good. Nose cone, you're gonna be bumping that a little bit, but that's fine too. If you use the display stand, you'll actually lock that nose cone into position. So this toy is amazing in Batroid mode. You're gonna have tons of fun. The launch version display stand, again, only works for fighter mode. And I think I speak for a lot of people when I say I'd much rather a Bandai included missiles with the toy instead of that launch version display stand, or just made that the standard stand that came with this toy. I don't know. At the end of the day, you do get this other display stand to put on the Batroid mode adapter. It plugs into the nose cone and then wraps around the hip joints. And it's all going to be very snug and lock into position. And once it does, just plop it on there and it will make an excellent looking display piece, wings out or in. And you, again, are just going to love this toy in Batroid mode. Transformation there may not be the best, but once you are there, it's nice. The Bandai DX VF-1 is the tallest Batroid mode yet at 26.5 centimeters. This edges out Yamato's 148 VF-1, which stood an impressive 25.5 centimeters tall, and is quite a bit bigger than the reigning masterpiece of VF-1 to no, poor choice of words. I meant Yamato's 160 version 2, which stands 21 centimeters tall. What's more impressive is that the DX toy weighs almost as much as a Yamato 148 VF-1 and a Yamato 160 V2 toy combined. What if we waved a magic wand and made the most recent Yamato VF-1, now sold by Arcadia, the same size as the DX? Would the DX really look much better? The truth is, in many ways, the DX looks like a scaled up Yamato. There are only two real improvements that jump out at me. First, the biceps have a bit more meat to them. Second, the back of the nose cone was far too visible on the Yamato toy, and it's now just barely peeking out of the DX's collar, which makes the torso look a bit more imposing. What about fighter mode? This toy is about the same size as Yamato's 148, maybe half a centimeter or so smaller at 30.5 centimeters long. Looking at these toys from the side, the Yamato 148 had some pretty low hanging arms and a head that didn't tuck up but was otherwise excellent. Yamato resolved those issues when it came time for their 160 version 2 toy, which is obviously much smaller at 24 centimeters long. From the side, both these toys are excellent. The DX toy does have a notch for the gearwalk mode arms, but looks sleeker through the nose, which makes it my preferred profile. What about a bird's eye take on things? Well, the line art here is impossibly narrow. Between the two toys, I don't really see a physical dimensions reason to argue either is superior. As great as this toy is, I also kind of hate it. It represents such a minor step forward from Yamato's 160 version 2 Valk, which was released 10 years ago, costed much less at the time, and is smaller. There's no question this toy is better, but there's also no question that Bandai could have made a bigger, truly awe-inspiring Valk. I think Bandai should have gone 132 scale and shot for the stars. A year or two later, they could have simplified this design a tiny bit and made it 160 scale. Instead, we have a new best VF-1 toy ever, but it's not something that will stop you from daydreaming about the next best VF-1 toy ever. Subscribe and leave comments to let me know what you think. Check out the full article on anymoon.com, and as always, thanks for watching.
That is one sexy toy.